Are you familiar with like tit for tat systems? Essentially, So there are different types of tit for tat systems, right? You've got tit for tat. You've got tit for tat tat.
The tit for tat is very bounded, right?
But you can't have a tit system because then somebody can come in and take advantage of it. It's really justice when you're the tatter, not when you're the titter, though, right?
No,
when you're the titter,
no,
it's just retribution.
No.
That tit for tat punishment is important
too. Is that force or justice?
All right, my friends, bros, and honeys, anybody who's watching. Basically, I have been in this influencer game for over 4 years that I have been an influencer here on YouTube. And I wouldn't push the numbers that I get here if there was no purpose to this. Like, if this was purposeless, the whole vibe would be different, the whole vibe of this channel. But the reason that it delivers the punch, the meaning punch, is because it does in fact have a organizing principle, something that I have been pursuing carefully and diligently as an influencer. And this has been the measured and constructive criticism of Dr. Jordan Peterson, the Canadian academic who has first been very against different pronouns, and then from there he went with the lobster theme and cleaning your room. I mean, he really took that opening there to really deliver to us. And I was consistently offering some constructive and measured criticism of this whole phenomenon, because if nobody does it, then watching Disney movies is too heavy. Like,
most of your viewers will have watched Pinocchio.
Probably.
There's a scene in Pinocchio where Geppetto wishes on a star, right? And what it means is he lifts up his eyes beyond the horizon to something transcendent, to something ultimate, because that's what a star is. It's part of the eternity of the night sky. And so he lifts his eyes up above his daily concerns and he says, what I want more than anything else is that my creation will become a genuine individual, right? It's a heroic gesture because it's so unlikely. And that catalyzes the puppet's transformation into a real being. And we start as puppets.
Peterson has to really make it heavy to watch Pinocchio, and then I have to give you a different kind of a look at Pinocchio again, so you just don't get carried away. It's an archetypal dance. It's about the logos. It's about the Legos. It's about this channel, is what that's about. But nowadays, today I have watched I watched a debate between Jordan Peterson and Destiny. And I have to say that this new Peterson really disappoints, and it was painful to watch. It was painful to watch this kind of debate for 2 hours. And the reason why it's painful is because Peterson has gotten very boring. And for that I blame the boss, Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is the one who made Peterson this way. It's so kind of global warming and vaccines and all this shit. Sure, Peterson compares the environmental movement to the Third Reich. Yes, he's unhinged here and there, but it's just not the same. Peterson is very impressionable, and by running with the screw of Ben Shapiro and others, he just kind of absorbs. He really is like a child. And he just absorbed this kind of these boring topics to talk about. Where is the all beef diet? Where is the Serbian enema? Where are these things that the lobsters and so on that gave us so much jest, so much, that really distinguished Jordan Peterson as a beef-eating YouTube daddy. Dad has become boring. It's just so fucking boring. But since I've watched 2 hours of it, I've clipped the select minutes from that whole kind of travesty, and I'm gonna deliver. We're gonna look at it and see what we find out here in terms of constructive criticism. So, hop along on this road that is very that's fuck it. Just hop along, all right? Fuck you.
Tell me how I'm wrong. I don't believe that, because what I see happening is two things. We have climate models that purport to explain what's going to happen over a century on the climate side, but we have economic models layered right on top of those that claim that there's going to be various forms of disaster for human beings economically as a consequence of that climate change. And so that's like two towers of Babel stacked on top of one another. And so, because if people were just saying, oh, the climate's going to change, there'd be no moral impetus in that. It's the climate's going to change and that's going to be disastrous for the biosphere and for humanity. But that's an economic argument as well as a climate-based argument. Like, there's nobody in 1890 who could have predicted what was going to happen in 1990 economically.
So Peterson is being an annoying little doofus here, frankly. As cognitively advanced animals, one of the things that we can do is project toward the future. Now, this makes us different from hamsters and other types of animals, like gerbils and animals like that. We can project toward the future. Now, sometimes the future greets us with things we didn't expect, and we shed salty tears. But if climate is being damaged or undermined by carbon, then it makes sense to have a sweet economic model that's going to show us how badly we're going to get fucked in the ass. Peterson is making it sound as if a bunch of guys just decided to predict everything that's going to happen in the next century. These models only concern themselves with the direct impact of potential climate change. They don't have to be perfect. You don't have to even believe in them or respect them, but you can use your brain and not make these lying arguments like Peterson makes, as if out of the vacuum some people have proclaimed that they can predict everything that's going to happen in a century. No, they just looked at the shit that's going on and said, in relation to climate, this is what's going to happen. And so I don't care if Peterson doesn't believe in global warming, but his underlying argument, his underlying caricature only works as an argument for you if you're an idiot. If you're an idiot, then you're like, ha, how can anybody predict anything going 100 years? We have to try, baby. We have to try to make a living, to predict things,
I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that there is an impact on climate across the planet. I
think that's highly deniable. We have no idea what the impact is from. We don't know where the carbon dioxide is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. Almost all the terrestrial temperature detection sites were first put outside urban areas, and then you have to correct. Then you have to correct for the movement of the urban areas, and then you introduce an error parameter that's larger than the purported increase in temperature that you're planning to measure.
Amazing revelations here from the Canadian parapsychologist Jordan Peterson. We didn't measure temperature until recently outside of big cities. Farmers didn't record measurements of temperature. No, why would they? Why would they? Everything is very confused that this is not data as we know it. I really wish I could just parachute myself out of this video right now.
This isn't data. This is guess. And there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it. It has this guise of compassion. Oh, we're going to save the poor in the future. It's like that's what the bloody communists said. And they killed a lot of people doing it. And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several 100 million of them now, well, that's a small price to pay for the future utopia. And we've heard that sort of thing before. And the alternative to that is to stop having global level elites plot out a utopian future or even an anti-dystopian future. And that's exactly what's happening now with organizations like the WEF. And if this wasn't immediately impacting the poor in a devastating manner, I wouldn't care about it that much, but it is.
Peterson professes in this annoying, hysterical manner of his love for the poor and his concern for the poor, and all this is predicated with the notion that the Western elites are pushing this alien ideology on the developing world, and therefore undermining those countries. But that's bullshit, because if you actually look at the opinion within these countries, many of them see global warming as a big issue. For example, according to Gallup, roughly 3 in 5 Indians, 62%, perceive climate change as a threat to their country in the next 20 years. Do you want to listen to them, or to a dude who cries when he watches Pinocchio all the time and doesn't believe that data was collected outside of cities? Temperature data.
I don't think you can compare like Hitler to people that are worried about climate change. The worry that I have here is because if we're applying this...
People in Germany thought Hitler was perfectly motivated by the highest of benevolent...
If I were to take this standard of evidence and apply this lens of analysis, couldn't I say the exact same thing about the conservative constellation of belief? They don't want to intervene anywhere in the world because they don't care about the problems there. They're anti-immigration because they hate brown people. Trump wanted to ban Muslims from coming to the United States because he's xenophobic. Conservatives don't want to have taxes to help the poor because they want homeless people to starve and die in the winter. I feel like
some of that's true. And yes, you can adopt that criticism. I think the difference with regards especially to the libertarian side of the conservative enterprise, but also to some degree to the conservative enterprise, is they're not building a central, gigantic organization to put forward this particular utopian claim.
Jordan Peterson really comes off as some obnoxious teenager who thinks that he has everything figured out after reading Ayn Rand or something. And any step away from Peterson could be a step toward Hitlerism. What distinguished Hitler was that his regime killed 2/3 of Europe's Jews and around 3 million Soviet prisoners of war. And so that is something that distinguishes Hitler from environmentalists, I would say. That's kind of something that kind of comes to mind.
Well, I also think it's an open question still to what degree Hitler's policies were right-wing versus left-wing, and no one's done the analysis properly yet to determine that.
Well, what do we
consider?
Because
it was a national socialist movement for a reason, and the socialist part of it wasn't accidental.
Well, but there was no, cooperatively formed businesses that were owned by all of the people for the people and distributed to the people. And I don't think redistribution was high on Hitler's list of things to do.
That's true. It was a strange mix of totalitarian policy.
I don't think it was a strange mix. I think it was a bid to appeal to mid-left and center-left, the KPD and the German Socialist Party by calling themselves National Socialists. I think it was very much like an authoritarian, ultra-nationalist regime that pretty squarely fits with. People get mad if you call something far right or far left because they have an attachment to terms.
One of the things I would have done if I would have been able to hang on to my professorship at the University of Toronto would have been to extract out a random sample of Nazi policies and strip them of markers of their origin and present them to a set of people with conservative or leftist beliefs and see who agreed with them more. And that analysis has never been done as far as I know. So we actually don't know. And we could know if the social scientists would do their bloody job, which they don't, generally speaking. That's something we could know. We could probably use the AI systems we have now, the large language models, to determine to what degree left and right beliefs intermingled in the rise of National Socialism. So that's all technically possible. And it hasn't been done, so it's a matter of opinion.
To strip Nazi policies, all of their policies, of their origin, and to divide them up, and to give people different parts of that pie, that is the dumbest possible study you can have. Because the fact that the Germans were some of the first to create a national highway system is far outweighed by killing 6 million Jews. Like, all of these fucking policies, you can't just randomly divide them in this way, unless you strip them of the horror of that regime. All of these, the fact that they might have created new national park systems or whatever they might have done, to strip it away to see who agrees with us more, that's just the dumbest fucking thing. They exist in the context of that history. Those policies are part of a unified whole, which created hell on earth. And so to divide them into these kind of pieces of pie disconnected from, who gives a shit if like the Germans were really good at preserving nature, and a bunch of liberals say, yeah, I agree with that. Because it's just so fucking stupid. That's like, Peterson is so obnoxious and so full of himself that he just says kind of this random shit that sounds profound, but it really is just fucking dumb. You don't like, it's kind of like saying, hey, do you support a country aggressively trying to industrialize itself to create a good industrial base? Do you support that? Well, in the context of the Soviet Union, that industrialization, caused famine in the countrysides, because that was the payment in exchange for Western technology. The Soviet Union was exporting grain from starving peasants. But outside of that, stripped of that, do you agree that a country should pursue aggressive industrialization as fast as possible? Do you agree with that or not?
You really
Correct.
think that you're in a position to evaluate the scientific credibility of the trials for the vaccines, do you?
No,
Really?
I don't. So I have to trust.
Then what are you
I
doing?
have to do,
I don't trust them. I looked at the bloody data.
First of all, you have to trust third parties to some extent. When you go outside,
I don't have to trust
Of course you do. You do every day. When you turn the keys in your car, you hope your engine doesn't explode. To some extent, we have to trust third-party institutions to make
Except when they
determination.
use force. How about that?
Especially when they use force. We trust the police officers. We trust the judicial systems.
We do. We on the left trust the police, do we?
To some extent, do we? If somebody's breaking into your
That's why
house,
we
who do you
defund
call?
them.
I'm not a defunder, but if somebody's breaking into your house, you can be the most defund person in the world. Who are you going to call? Are you going to call your neighbor? Are you going to call Joe Biden? Are you going to call Obama? Are you going to call the Black Panthers? You're going to call the cops.
Okay, so tell me this. Tell me this then, because the core issue here is use of force, as far as I'm concerned. We examined some of the weeds around that.
All right, my friends, we're nearing the end of this video, and it's time for some conclusions. Basically, Peterson reminds me of an 11th grader who started to discover for themselves the world of politics. Peterson, like an 11th grader, half-forming libertarian, really doesn't trust authority. Peterson doesn't like authority. Peterson doesn't believe in data, whether it's climate data or vaccine data. Peterson doesn't reject it. Peterson used to be a very snazzy dresser. He used to dress very well. Now his jackets seem to just call for attention. Someone's like, look at my jacket, look at me, look at my jacket. It's so outrageous. Also very sort of juvenile in a certain way too, to dress like that, I think. Well, maybe it's not bad, maybe it's kind of being youthful at heart. For me personally, dressing is connected with courting a honey. So it's like if you spend a lot of time dressing up and you're not courting a honey and no honey is interested in you, it's almost like who gives a shit what you wear. But that's a digression. So yeah, Peterson is just very distrustful, but also very sure of his beliefs. People who disagree with him could be Nazis. Again, very, very sort of feisty young libertarian. It's almost like as part of his life crisis after he received the enema, this parapsychologist became very distrustful of things, and I don't know. I don't know. We need to take Peterson's opinions, chop them up, and test it with different groups to see who agrees with him more on the left or the right. That's the only way we can categorize his opinion. My friends, thank you so much for watching, and have an excellent day.